I have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Dogfighting is back in a big way for Star Wars. I've seen a lot of buzz that this episode can only be described as having felt quintessentially Star Wars. And I'm going to chalk that up to the awesome dogfighting scene. It reminded me a lot of the Obi-Wan and Jango Fett Attack of the Clones scene combined with the original Escape from the Death Star TIE Fighter battle. Also, I'm not sure if you noticed, but the turbo lasers had smoke puffs like real AA guns, and I thought that was a neat touch. This episode was full of lore dumps about Sabine, Ahsoka, the New Republic, how the Force works. This episode had everything you could want. It filled with new characters, two of which made their first jump from animation into live action this episode. We're going to talk about those two guys here in a second. But how about the cartoony aspect that we saw, too? It felt like it was ripped right out of the Clone Wars episode to me. We've got a show here today that is as full as that episode. We've got rapid reactions. We've got Always in Motion. We've got the Star Wars moment of the week for you guys. We have a lot more than that also. But I couldn't hold this show up on my own, and so the good news is I don't have to do that, because here to help me out is the snarky sideline senator himself, Colin Archer.
Hey, Carter, man, we did the rapid reactions last night, and I just kept thinking of more and more things to come up with how amazing, how much stuff that they crammed into 30-something minutes. It was insane. And I can't wait to talk about this. We got a lot to talk about, lots of little things. You said you prepared for this all day, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, I
like
dove
in depth detail, all this stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna get to it because I dove deep trying to research this episode.
So this episode is going to be a super huge treat, and this is 3 episodes in. What else are we going to get? You'll find that out, and what our predictions are in another section.
Always in Motion.
Always in Motion. Yeah.
But for now, we have our first segment. We have rapid reactions, so you guys can hear our raw, unfiltered takes about this episode of Ahsoka 5 minutes after we watched it. So, here you go with the rapid reactions.
He doesn't seem to take a hint, this guy.
Colin, I mean, that was just some refreshing, good old-fashioned Star Wars. Lightsabers, dogfight. Look, up there on the dogfight. What'd you think about it? Because I really, really enjoyed this episode.
I really did too. I think people are going to fall into a trap because it didn't advance the plot as much as some people would have liked. But I'm sorry, there was so much depth to this episode. I mean, that we can't even cover it all in a rapid reaction. Hu Yang.
Oh, not
doing
even,
the fights. Jason Syndulla. Why wasn't Leia in that scene? All the little dialogue fights, the dog fights, the fighters look like General Grievous, the Belbulab fighters, right?
I know, and some of them, the cannon fodder, the red shirts, they looked like upside down P-51 Mustangs. Right. I thought that was a super cool homage to George and his love of dogfighting. I thought that was clear, and I thought it was really good.
And then we get more.
The beginning of the episode was so front-loaded with lore, too. Right. We got a giant expansion on Ahsoka and Sabine's relationship. We got an expansion on the Jedi Order. We got an expansion on the New Republic in a big way. As you said, we had Jason Syndulla on screen. And at the end, we get a big expansion on Purgil, and we get a huge confirmation that we're headed to a new galaxy.
Yes, and the immensity of this hyperspace ring, and Jason Syndulla. I want to be a Jedi, and the way Hera looks at him, it's just like we could do an episode on that look that Mary Elizabeth Winstead gave that character. It is so deep. Yeah. It is so enthralling, and it's deep. I'm sorry, it's amazing what is the magic that is in this episode.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, this realized a bunch of important things from Rebels. This really gave us a big continuation of a lot of stuff from that. But this is just expanding the lore of Star Wars so quickly and so broadly with the talk of the other galaxies and the talk of Peridia. And the way they ended on Balin's skull, this has a lot of weight to it. There's a lot going on here.
Yes. Sure is. I can't wait to get in, talk about all the nitty gritty.
I know. Yeah, I'm excited to jump in. This was our fresh reactions. We're going to go take another look at the episode, and then we're going to hop into it on the show right now. All right, that was our raw reaction to Time to Fly, the part 3 of the Ahsoka series. Colin, how are you feeling 24 hours after?
Super pumped. Again, watching this a second time, thinking of all the little scenes, all the little characters, reading the comments online, absorbing what the internet has to say, and it's just like I wish I had like the bag in the hospital put into my veins of like the understanding. And I've had a busy day. You've done a lot more research than I am. I'm anxious. I hope I can. I'm going to do the best I can to get the knowledge out of you. And provide some of my own insights with this stuff. And I don't even think this is going to be a long episode. We're not going to do this one justice with all the little things. We're having to really put this stuff out there out of our brains, and it's just a lot. It's so fun. I'm looking so much forward to this discussion.
There's quite a bit going on in the episode. I mean, it's busy visually and with the dialogue. There's a lot of lore dump, and so the best thing for us to do is just jump right in. So, written by Dave Filoni and directed by Steph Green. This is her second Ahsoka episode to direct. She directed episode 2, and great team. Obviously, Dave wrote the whole series. We're going to keep saying, written by Dave Filoni. And he only directed a handful of episodes. So far, Steph Green, this may be my favorite episode of the 3. I also like the second episode better than the first one. So I really like her directorial style. I don't know if she's coming back on any more of the episodes. I think it was just these 2, but she did a really good job. And so I was really happy about that. The title of the episode, as we mentioned, is Time to Fly. This has got a couple meanings. It's about Sabine, and it's her time to fly as an apprentice. And also, this is probably the biggest space fight we've gotten since... And by biggest, I don't mean most ships, but maybe the longest sequence
and most interactive
of a space fight we've gotten since, like, Rise of Skywalker, Exegol, maybe even Rogue One.
Right.
Like, this was a long space battle. Of the TV show, it's probably like a third of the show. Maybe a quarter, but it's a lot. It's a lot of it. And it's a good thing. It's a good reason it's a lot. But aside from that exciting sequence that we'll talk about later, the opening of this episode really caught me just immediately because
you're
it's
punched in the face, just straight up.
It's such a cool sequence, and the way getting to see Sabine train with Huyang is really fun. Just knowing the history behind Huyang, just knowing how many Jedi he's met, how many times he must have done this exact same exercise with how many thousands of Jedi. I mean, it means a lot to get to see the Order continued through Huyang. Like, that's the reason his character exists in this show, is to make Ahsoka grapple with the existence of the Order and her past with it. And he's a really good placement of the Jedi Order, the original Jedi Order in this timeline, because, Balin, aside from Balin, is there anybody around that was even part of that order that wasn't a Padawan at the time? Like, maybe Cal Kestis is still around, we don't know. Ahsoka, obviously, she left the Order, and then Grogu. And aside from them, Huyang is the only real bastion left of the original Jedi Order.
And so, wouldn't you say we're getting way more of Huyang than you expected?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I thought he was just going to be like the narrator almost, or this explainer character of what was going on. We have seen that a little bit. But like I said, this little scene punches you in the face, and it's almost like they're doing a karate kata or something like that. And because you can tell at the end of the little sequence, he's got where she her Boken stick went through the light beams, right? And he shows that, and really to get down into these are the first scenes we're getting down these nitty gritty details. So these Padawans or younglings are sitting there practicing with these lightsabers, and this is some sort of may not necessarily test or probably like a pop quiz or something to see the range of their abilities or something. You know?
Well, so Hu Yang's sitting here doing his best General Grievous impression, and Sabine is going through the same forms that Ezra and Kanan taught her on Avalon in Season 3 of Rebels. And so in those, it's, 1, 2, 3. She's got the numbers with it. But here, Hu Yang is going Ki Rei, Gai Ki Rei, just saying a bunch of different, phonetically Asian-sounding moves. And that is a little bit of an homage to George Lucas's original idea of the Jedi as like an Eastern mysticism group. And so getting to see, this was the original forms. The forms became simplified with Kanan and Ezra, obviously, but Hu Yang's teaching some ancient Jedi lightsaber techniques that seem basic, but they obviously have some form of meaning. And it's just really exciting for us to get to engage with like the literal past through Hu Yang. I mean, it's just, he's basically a character out of history for these people. And so it's really cool to get him to share all of the knowledge that he has.
I mean, and we get to watch it. I wonder if there's going to be Hu Yang in these other films that are going to come out. Some version of that. We're going to see some of the exact. They made a puppet to do all this.
I know, and
right?
it's a good puppet
it's
too.
So cool.
And they got a great A-list actor in David Tennant. The other thing I'm really enjoying about Hu Yang's character is how opinionated he is, but not in a C-3PO way. He's not he's not like a weenie. Like he's not afraid to just tell Ahsoka no many times. And also he keeps ragging on Sabine, which is, not cool, but he's not a person. So it's kind of just like you have to chalk it up to, well, he's a computer, so he's always just going to be blunt and to the point. If this was if he were a living, breathing character, we'd probably dislike him a lot more because everything he says is super rude. But other than that, since he's a droid, he's allowed to get away with it. Yeah.
And yeah, I love seeing this. The General Grievous impression. You hit the nail on the head with that.
Yeah. So this opening scene is just super exciting for us because we're getting to watch them go through a combination of just a regular Jedi training regimen plus so many parallels to Luke's first Jedi training lesson on the Millennium Falcon on the way to Alderaan.
But it's so many other first Jedis where you put on the face covering, right?
Right, but that's where it all started, was with Luke right there with the blast shield on. And
on
so
the starship.
It's a clear homage to that. I mean, so much so that even some of the dialogue is mirroring each other. And this conversation between Ahsoka and Sabine about commitment to the Jedi Order is really important. And it really gives us the foundation for where we're coming from on Sabine even trying to be a Jedi.
Yeah, the small little detail is it's only in the subtitles that they're using that Boken sticks to train, and usually they use like a training lightsaber. Is this one of the first times we've seen them use the Boken sticks or something like that?
I think so. I mean, Kanan had them practice with Boken sticks, but they didn't have training sabers. I mean, they were on the run, and we don't know if Ahsoka and them have them or not. But this is the first time I've seen it on live action and in any kind of formal Jedi training. That wasn't really Jedi training anyway. That was something different.
What I'm really looking forward to, there's going to be some TikToker or some person out there who's going to replicate this somehow and replicate these scenes. It's going to be really fun.
Yeah, it is. So when Ahsoka has Sabine put the helmet on, she makes the comment, "How am I supposed to see? How am I supposed to fight?" And that was really ironic to me, being that blind Kanan is who taught her how to fight with a lightsaber in the first place. Kanan was not beginning her Jedi training. Kanan, I don't think, intended for Sabine to ever become a Jedi. He certainly did intend for her to become proficient with a lightsaber, which she did. And so our question here is Kanan's blindness and in training Sabine through that, why is Sabine all of a sudden like, I can't fight if I'm blinded? Is this her just saying in general, or is this her talking about her lack of the Force?
Yeah. Did she forget Kanan was blind?
Right.
Forget his existence. It's been some time.
And Trials of the Darksaber, me and my wife just watched through Rebels all the way through, and Trials of the Darksaber is one of her favorite episodes. It's one of my favorite episodes because of how Kanan trains Sabine. I mean, in that episode, this is probably the most where Kanan and Sabine connect as characters, but it's also Kanan taps into training Sabine in a very unique way that you wouldn't train someone who's trying to be a Jedi in. Like, he's training a Mandalorian to use a lightsaber, and Kanan finally realizes it, and that's when everything clicks, and that's when Sabine starts to get it, and that's when everybody starts to get it, is when Kanan really turns her training upside down, and he's leaning into her Mandalorianness, where Ahsoka seems to be shying away from it in Sabine's training. And I think that might be where the two are having such a struggle here at the outset.
Yeah, I think they even mentioned, Ahsoka here mentions about her being a Mandalorian and something, I forget the exact words. It's got to be a struggle. I think they mentioned there aren't many, Huyang says it, there aren't many Mandalorian Jedi at all, right?
Right, yeah, he says there's only a few in a subsequent scene, which is really, really intriguing because we've only ever heard of one, and it was Tar Vizsla. Huyang either, he might know Grogu exists, but he's certainly not counting Grogu because Grogu wasn't a Mandalorian when he was at the temple. And so, really, as far as we know as the audience, Tar Vizsla is the only one, but Huyang says few, so there's at least a couple others floating around out there for some reason.
You saying Grogu triggered a thought. Huyang knows where Grogu came from. I mean, because he's
got to know something about
He knows
him.
where all the other of Grogu's people came from. Surely.
He's got to know, he's got to know something about Grogu. I mean, obviously, Grogu was at the temple. Huyang would have been aware,
but he knows about Yaddle and Yoda and those who came
but that
before
doesn't
them.
imply he knows where they are because Huyang meets them when they're at their Padawan stage, building a lightsaber. So he may not know where he comes from before that. Or he might. We don't know. But that's a really important question mark is what's Huyang's involvement with Grogu? And really, there's a lot of question marks surrounding the existence of this time period with the Jedi Order and what Luke's doing. Why isn't Huyang on loan to Luke? Does Luke know about Huyang? Like, you got to think. Ahsoka is on some kind of quest. She's on a mission on her own. And she's very clearly talking to Huyang many times about how she's not a Jedi. While at this exact same time, Luke Skywalker is explicitly building a Jedi Order. He is saying, I am a Jedi. I am rebuilding the Jedi Order. Why is Huyang with Ahsoka and not Luke? Like, we have got to get that question resolved. We have got to get, and I was disappointed it didn't come in this episode, and I'll talk about it every episode until we get it. We need a reasonable explanation for why Luke Skywalker is uninvolved in this story. It's whatever that explanation is fine, but we have to have some kind of explanation.
Yeah, exactly. And then, where's Ben Solo at this point in time too? Mm-hmm. Is he just a baby?
He's got to be.
Kid?
Yeah, we don't know exactly what year.
Jason Syndulla's.
Yeah, he's younger than Jason because Jason had to have been born during the war. But we don't know exactly what year this took place. But Ben Solo's anywhere from 4 to 7 at this point, and he doesn't go off and train with Luke until he's like 11 or 12, I don't think. And Jason is obviously way older than that. Jason's like 9 or 10, maybe. I don't know. I'm not very good at guessing kids' ages. But if we assume that Jason was born 9 months after Kanan died, then Jason is probably 9 or 10 at this point, I think.
Yeah, he looks it.
We don't have a confirmed date for this, and it just makes it very difficult to have these conversations about how old people are and in proximity. And we have a lot of foreshadowing about Jason here in a minute.
Yep.
But the next scene, I know, just gripped you by the chest. It had to have. I mean, it had to have a full hold on Colin because this giant sweeping fleet scene with the A-wings curving around is gorgeous.
It is.
Oh, it looks so good.
No expense spared here. The A-wings flying across was beyond cool. And then Home One again. I love that they're using this Home One.
I know. I really like they're leaning on it. It makes me wonder what Akbar's doing, why he's kicking around, because it feels like Hera's in charge of the defense fleet. So I really want to know where Akbar is. But that A-wing shot is really, really, really reminiscent of the opening to Revenge of the Sith, because it's so calm at the beginning when Anakin and Obi-Wan's interceptors come in until that camera change, and then it's just ships and thousands, and that's exactly what that shot looks like, just not over a battle.
Yeah, and it's so fun to see, and this episode, like we started out, there's a lot more of these spaceships.
Yes, yeah.
Can't wait to get to that too.
Chancellor Mon Mothma. Man, it is having Andor come out just last year and getting to see Genevieve O'Reilly knock it out of the park every single episode makes this appearance way more weightier. I mean, I don't associate. I associate Mon Mothma with Return of the Jedi. That's where she's from. But Mon Mothma's been in so much Andor. Genevieve O'Reilly did such a bang up job in that role.
We're going to get more with Andor season 2.
Yes, that I definitely think of her more as an Andor character, and so this is a great thread to see traced through those two shows and through Return of the Jedi. And it's just like Saw, Mon Mothma has become this era-defining character. She's become this era linchpin, right? Whereas Saw is our bridge from the Clone Wars all the way up to A New Hope. Mon Mothma is now more of our bridge from A New Hope leading into the sequels. She obviously is dead before the sequels begin, but she just lets us trace the thread. Andor, Rebels, Return of the Jedi, and Ahsoka. And I didn't forget about her deleted scene in Revenge of the Sith, which is great. They need to bring that in somehow in like a flashback or something. But she's much more of a Rebellion New Republic character where Saw served the Clone Wars to rise the Empire purpose.
Remind the listeners what that deleted scene is.
So that deleted scene in Revenge of the Sith that they took out has Mon Mothma and Bail Organa and Padme Amidala. I believe maybe some other people are sitting around the table, but no one says anything but these three characters, discussing the corruption of the Republic and the fall of the Jedi. Or no, they haven't discussed the fall of the Jedi yet, but they're talking about what they need to do to get the emergency powers back from Palpatine, get the Republic back on track, blah, blah, blah. And then, shit hits the fan in like a couple hours.
Basically establishing that they're the crew.
Yeah, that they are going to be who... Oh, that's what it is. It is it's after all the shit hits the fan, and they're talking about basically what they need to be doing on the inside of the Senate to make sure that reforms exist.
Right.
And also that there's possibly going to be a need for extra senatorial action, as we'll call the rebellion at this point. And so that's a big linchpin of their whole conversation. God, why is Leia not in the shot either?
Yeah,
it makes me so sad.
That was one of my
Leia's
biggest
not
questions,
in the shot.
and I hope, just like you asked, I hope we get an answer why Luke's not involved. I hope we get a question as to why Leia is not involved here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's right exactly. I think there's more to it, but one of the big things is in actress, right? They want it to be a big deal. They want it to be a big reveal. Surely that's a total speculation, right? But whoever's going to fill that role of a new Leia should have some pomp and circumstances around that.
Right, yeah, and we don't know how they're going to fill that, but this era, like, we just cannot... You can get away with not telling the stories with the original trio with Mandalorian because that's such an isolated story. Mandalore didn't exist when George made the original trilogy. Like, it's not something that we needed to have those new characters in, but they are directly responsible for the construction of this new republic. I mean, Leia is steeped in their government for 20 years after this point.
And if you go back to the books, she's a major character in those too, right? So
we have got to know what they're doing, and it's odd to me that we haven't even gotten lip service at this point. Hera knew all of them. I mean, she served alongside all of them, and we still haven't gotten any kind of connection or mention. I mean, we haven't even gotten a mention of Kanan explicitly, which is what you would expect from Hera way more than you would Luke or Leia, but just some mention of the original trilogy heroes really needs to be made.
So please explain to us the Senator Ziono.
Well,
I think I saw you tweet some stuff.
Yeah, I want to talk about it because it's a way bigger deal to this episode than I ever thought. But I want to talk about, before we get to Ziono, I want to talk about Mon Mothma and Hera's interaction together because this is leaning on the Luke and Leia and Han thing. And Hera and Mon Mothma meet each other in Rebels a couple times. Hera's on Yavin 4. She's on Yavin 4 during Rogue One. She knows Mon Mothma really well. They were with each other when the rebellion was a few hundred people. So they are tight. And so when Hera walks in the room and Mon Mothma is making very light, casual conversation with her for a few seconds, it is, to me, gut-wrenching to watch this Ziono guy just be like, will you get on with it? Like, we've got to hold this meeting. And I understand, look, this is even how it may work in the real world. Like, that, if you can't hold up a meeting for this interpersonal conversation. But the galaxy was just won 4 or 5 years before this. Like, Hera and Mon Mothma are heroes, and it is, it is difficult to watch, and it's a good thing. But it's difficult to see the people we know who've been with the rebellion from the very beginning, been building it for years, been doing all of this action, now people like Senator Ziono come in, and they had nothing to do with it, and they've just taken hold of the New Republic
Harry
government.
even calls him out, right?
Yes, she does. And so this is something I'll say that I really like in the new canon better than I like in the EU, is that in the old EU stuff, and I love Zahn's novels, and I love the old EU. This is not a knock on the EU. This is just something that is more realistic about the canon. Is in the old EU stuff, the rebellion is essentially just moves into the role of government. They have adversaries from the inside, and we'll talk about them in a moment. But it's still, Mon and Luke and Han and Leia, like they are running the complete show. They're on top. There's not really many other voices at the table except for one or two straw men to give them kind of a adversary on the inside. That is explicitly not how the New Republic has been run or managed at this point. Mon, clearly, through these conversations, has no handle on these guys. She is overwhelmed just by her facial expressions of these senators and the way that they're interacting. And so, getting to see this New Republic government really, really quickly filled with people who are coming in after the war and filled with people who were not there at the beginning is way more realistic, because that's the way that those kinds of things happen all the time. And so getting to see that play out, it's something that I really appreciate in the new canon more than I do in the expanded universe.
Yeah, the galaxy is a massive place. There's tens of thousands of these worlds, and even not all of them even have senators. I can't imagine the bureaucratic nightmare this would be. And then so many that we see in the new books. What was the one we read with Leia and with the first Bloodline, and those guys who they were enslaved but still support more authoritarian style governments. Dealing with all of this stuff must be a complete and total nightmare just to organize, let alone deal with the actual politics of it. I mean, look at this guy sitting here doing what he does.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just like, I don't want to say that any of these senators are malicious or they're like imperial sympathizers or anything like that. These people just are not cool to work with. Like, they're just coworkers that suck. Like, they are just like, they're selfish, they're jockeying for themselves, they don't care about the sacrifices the rebellion made, they very clearly don't care about the rebellion's heroes. Like, they are just, the rebellion was a means to an end for them to get power. And that wasn't even for the case for Ziono.
I mean, if even that, yeah. Because, like, how frustrating must it be for Hera and Mon Mothma sitting there to not want to, like, we got rid of one dictatorship and now we brought you to the table and this is going on.
Thousands of little dictators now sitting at the table. The way that they're having this conversation, I cannot help but think about how it mirrors the Shadow Council at the end of Mandalorian Season 3.
Yeah.
I mean, even the conversation talking about Thrawn's return, and there's some people denying it, and some people are like, no, it's happening. It's the exact same thing as the Shadow Council. It's just played in reverse. I mean, some of those Shadow Council guys are like real excited Thrawn's going to be their savior. Some of those Shadow Council guys don't think it's real. Some of them don't want Thrawn to return, and it's the same right here, just in a different way.
Yeah, it's a total denial. I'm probably going to catch some flack for this, but it reminds me of the whole Harry Potter thing. If Voldemort isn't back, you can't go around saying stuff like that. You're going to cause a panic.
Right.
And that's a good point in a sense, but you're denying reality at the same time. And if Hera Syndulla walked up to me and told me that, I'd be like, oh my goodness. And I guess another small nitpick, why does she have to go to these guys for resources anyway? She's the general here, and she's got this whole fleet. She can't pop off one ship to go do something about this.
See, and that's the thing where I think we have to, what we may be seeing is Mon Mothma is to blame for the state of the New Republic military. Like, that's just, Mon Mothma is not without fault. She demilitarizes the New Republic at the end of the Aftermath trilogy. And so this decision in these scenes, I think we're kind of seeing Mon Mothma notice, like, maybe this was a bad idea. Maybe her idea was not 100% the right track, because now you have people like Ziono taking advantage of what she is trying to do and having a peaceful galaxy. And that, I mean, it ultimately is the downfall of the Republic. It's the downfall of the New Republic, is their demilitarization. It's not the Jedi Order for the New Republic. It's the fact that they had no standing military, and the First Order was just able to walk through the front door.
Well, and I mean, you can go even further. They integrated all these Imperials back into their society, and it was ineffective.
Yeah, and that is also a Mon Mothma program.
Right.
Which we saw in Mandalorian Season 3. It worked for a lot of people, even worked for Dr. Pershing, but there were just bad agents that were able to infiltrate that.
And manipulate and all
wreak
the other
havoc.
things. Yeah.
I mean, to totally wreak havoc on what the New Republic was trying to do. I mean, it's very interesting to see that Mon Mothma striving for perfection missed the mark pretty hard.
Right.
It's sad to see, but it is the case.
And a lot of these depictions happened in real life. You know, I was stationed in Iraq for a while. There's a lot of issues with what happened to the people of the old military and what do you do it. How do you replace a government like that? It gets to be a big deal and it gets to be really deep. You can think about a lot of different things, and I'm sure maybe not anymore, but all the really high-minded political courses or government courses talk about situations like this, and what it boils down to is there's no right answer. You have to make decisions, stand by them, and empower the people to enforce your will for the better, and that's extremely hard to do.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, coming in and trying to operate a new government is very, very difficult, especially for them who are coming in. You know, the Empire did not reign for that long. Mon Mothma was a senator in the Old Republic, so she obviously knows what the New Republic Senate should look like, but they are just so gun-shy of a new government existing like that Mon Mothma has much more limited powers than she formerly did. And, you know, the Bloodline book is all about them even figuring out if they want a figurehead at the top of their government or not, or if all senators are equal, like in this true democracy situation that they have. And it's just really, really interesting, the dynamics that they've built around the New Republic government at this time. And because of the nature of the sequels and the nature of the entire New Republic government getting destroyed, the First Order being able to, like, you know, just walk through the front door, they have to have this political strife throughout this whole 30-year period. This is only, 4 or 5 years into their government. It's 25 more years of just this insane internal strife.
Yeah, and somebody could make the case that it's all of Palpatine's machinations working in the background to sow these evil seeds.
The one little thing I'll mention too about Hera and Mon Mothma's dynamic is Chopper is such a menace that the most powerful being in the galaxy is very aware of the troublemaking that he gets into, so much so that she mentions him by name as being a menace.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite characters. Isn't going to be. Some people are annoyed by him. I really like him.
It took me like 4 watches through Rebels to be endeared to Chopper, but I finally became endeared to Chopper. But it took me a little while. Basically, it took me until I could understand what he was saying.
Yeah.
When I could begin to understand him, I was like, okay, this is funnier.
Yeah. Like the last episode, what he was saying about shooting the ship down over the city.
So we walk through this conversation. Hera says that she mentions the defectors on Corellia. There's a female senator who I'm not sure what her name is. She is defending the oath of loyalty that they took. And my question to you is, do you think this woman is a fool or a conspirator? Because she says, the oath, they took an oath of loyalty. And so is this like her just being some foolish, out-of-touch senator or rich person? Or is there any basis to maybe she is a spy?
We'd have to know more about her to make that determination. But, Occam's razor, right? She's got to be a fool.
Right.
So Occam's razor is the most simple explanation is the correct explanation. And so what makes all these depictions fun is seeing stuff like you just said. What they said this, what can we determine from that?
Right. What are her motives? What are the motives of all of these characters?
And so Ziono, he's a straight butthead, right? He reminds me so much of Phalia from Heir to the Empire.
Right. Borsk Phalia. Yes. Yeah.
Who, even then, we talked a lot about that guy. There's so many determinations you can make about him. And like Phalia, I wouldn't call him an idiot at all. He knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah, he was very aware.
But he was extremely self-serving, and to a point of he was unbearable. Whenever you read his line, or I listened to it, whenever I listen to his lines, I'm like, I don't want to. It's like, why did somebody slap this guy? And that's exactly what I'm thinking about Xiono here.
Xiono's posture. I mean, you hit the nail on the head with the Borskfalia thing. He is right along that. And I think we might need to explain to our listeners who Borskfalia is before we get deeper into the conversation. So, for those who don't know, in the original Thrawn trilogy written by Timothy Zahn in the 90s, part of the expanded universe, Borskfalia is a character, and if you don't know what the expanded universe is, it is the old Star Wars timeline before Disney acquired the company, so it's kind of like an alternate reality, but it's not canon in any way. These stories don't touch those stories in some meaningful timeline way, but they draw on them a lot, and that's what Colin's getting at, is this Xiono guy is basically drawn out of this character named Borskfalia, who's a Bothan politician who denied the rising threat of the Imperial Remnant and also denied the rising threat of the Yuuzhan Vong. He was the Chancellor of the New Republic. At first, he was just a politician in the New Republic. Then he became the Chancellor of the New Republic, and he kept them relatively weak. And he was always antagonizing Luke, Leia, and Han. Now, he wasn't a villain at any point in so far as, like, Palpatine is a villain or, like, Vader is a villain. He was never for the Empire, but he was always so selfish above any of the good of the New Republic.
Right. And he was an interesting character as a foil to the advancement. Like, he got Akbar to put on suspended for a while, just a thorn in everybody's side. And that feels exactly what this Xiono guy is going to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. This Xiono guy is also worth expanding on his background, because there is a lot of information about this Xiono guy.
And I have no idea. Please.
Do you not at all? See, I wondered if you had any clue or not. So I'll fill you in. Xiono may be more dangerous than Borskfalia because we don't know if he's just selfish or if he has any kind of ties to the First Order. And so that Discord alert just went off for anybody wondering what the bump womp is in the background. But anyway, Xiono, he is a character that shows up in the television show Star Wars Resistance, which is an animated TV show that came after Star Wars Rebels. It aired on a Disney program. I don't know which one. I don't know if it was Disney XD or what channel it aired on. Yeah. But it was designed for children a little bit younger than Rebels audience. So think 8 to 10, like that range. Maybe even just a little bit younger, maybe 7 to 10. And so this show follows a character named Kazuda Xiono. Kazuda's a total good guy. He's a great protagonist. He's one of the best parts of the show. He's very endearing. His father is Hamato Xiono, this senator right here. And so I was really surprised that they gave Hamato Xiono such a big role, because Resistance has had like no connectivity with anything else. It takes place during the sequels, and it takes place through the sequels. So it begins before The Force Awakens and ends in the lead up to The Rise of Skywalker. So you cover all of the sequels during the show. It's a lot like, it's more similar to Clone Wars than it is to Rebels in that regard, that it spans between movies. But his father, Hamato Xiono, the character we see on screen, is only in it for a couple scenes in different points in the show. But when I saw him in the trailer, I was like, oh, they're just going to do some Resistance cameo nod to this guy. And they gave him this massive role where he is now like the chief antagonist of the New Republic government.
The Falia analog. Yep.
Yeah, and so I was very surprised by that. But the reason I say that he may be more dangerous is that Xiono is the senator from Hosnian Prime, which during the sequels is the capital of the New Republic government. They rotate the capital, and it's on Hosnian Prime during the sequels. And his homeworld is destroyed during The Force Awakens, but he is conveniently off-planet when it happens. Now, that show got canceled. There are a lot of hanging questions and cliffhangers and backstory info that we never got out of that show. And really, one of the questions is, was Xiono, did he know that Hosnian Prime was about to get destroyed, and that's why he wasn't on his home planet? Because that turns this guy from Borskfalia analog to absolutely insane person who let every person he's ever known get blown up for no apparent reason right now.
Yeah. And so, gosh, that's very insightful. I haven't watched that show. Thank you for letting me know.
I'll say it's worth watching once. I don't think I'd ever go rewatch it, but it's got some really good moments. There's like a Jedi temple they explore. There's just some more lore than you would imagine in that show. It's worth it. It's worth one watch through.
Yeah. But so that maybe not necessarily finish the story, but establish a better foundation that answers those questions about was he in on it, or did he know, or what was his role or something. And he doesn't paint a very rosy picture for himself here. He's either a denier or a collaborator.
And then Hera gets real heated, and she says, "Were you ever in the war, Senator?" And Xiono goes on to talk about, no, he wasn't, and he came in after, which is so crazy. He is way worse than Borskvalia. Borskvalia was at least, he came into the war, I think, either after Hoth or after Yavin or after Hoth. But regardless, he came into the war before it was over. I mean, the Bothans helped rescue the Death Star plans.
Right.
Phalia at least helped, he at least logistically organized that. This guy didn't do any of that. He is so much worse trying to tell this rebellion general that she has no right to go marshal her own ship and go look for her own friend, who is also a hero to the rebellion.
Yeah, and I mean, and that means they capitulated to every imperial demand the whole time, and we know that it didn't matter where you were or what you were doing; that the Imperials' requirements were just horrendous.
They had some kind of boot on your throat, even if you were in, because Hosnian Prime is like Coruscant. It's a core world; it's very affluent. There's still some kind of, you may not be working on Narkina 5, but you're still, even in those positions of power, those people felt betrayed when Palpatine destroyed the Senate, because that was their life and livelihood. There had been hundreds of think of the Alderaanian royal family, hundreds of generations of people trained just to represent their utopian society in the Senate. The Senate as a concept being done away with is, I mean, their life is totally altered. So you have to imagine it's the same for people from Hosnian Prime.
Yeah, and the way Hera talks to him, just sat back and waited to see who came out on top. The delivery of those lines is completely awesome, total gold. And the way he responds, it says softly and says no, and just like the look on her face, all of their faces, it's like they're, she's the boots on the ground. She's the person who did the dirty work, got her hands dirty, and really, along with Luke Skywalker and Lando Calrissian and all these other guys, to stand there in front of these guys who sent their kids off to war or something, as they say, and the total deference to her is well deserved.
Yeah, and Mon Mothma's face says it all. Mon Mothma agrees with Hera in that this guy is, a clown that didn't help them in any way, but Mon Mothma understands, you've got to be diplomatic, and no matter if these people helped you or not, you got to have a republic with them. There's no republic, one, without the core worlds, but also just without the worlds in general. I mean, you don't have a republic of only worlds that helped the rebellion. That's not even going to be half. And so it's just this really difficult thing to watch for characters that we are so invested in, like Hera and Mon Mothma. We know the sacrifices they've made, but Mon Mothma, being a politician and just understanding that this is how you get government done, is compromise, is that she doesn't want to have to compromise. She wants these people to pay Hera the respect and deference, but she can't make them. She can't make them respect Hera in any way, even though she deserves the utmost respect.
Right, and beyond, right. Again, just the looks on their faces. They did such a good job making this.
They did. This was a good scene. I was happy they did this senatorial scene. It was necessary, really, to kind of give us a what's going on in the New Republic at this very moment kind of situation. I mean, it was important for us to see, and I'm very happy that we got to see it. In the next scene was just something. So Mon Mothma foreshadowed it just at the beginning. She mentioned Jason Syndulla, but then I did not expect to immediately get that green-haired, get the green-haired kid on screen, but we totally did. And it looks, honestly, way, way better than I ever could have hoped. I mean, it looks good. It doesn't look bad. His hair doesn't look goofy. He looks good.
And the foreshadowing here even more. He says, I want to be a Jedi, and the way she looks at him, right?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. This hit me like a ton of bricks. And her thinking of Kanan in this exact moment, you could tell that that Filoni or whoever's back there, you have to sit there. This is why you have this look on your face. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead is able to deliver.
Right.
Right? It's Very impactful.
Well, and you can't look at that kid and not think of Kanan, regardless of the Jedi line, because they cast that kid to look like Kanan.
Right.
I mean, he just looks like a young Kanan. I was very surprised. Also, he calls Sabine Aunt Sabine. It is awesome. I was just, that alone was worth seeing. I was like, that is so nice to hear.
Yeah. And so I wonder, they should do some shorts and stuff, like of the Jason and Chopper tooling around Home One. Some sort of little kid show. When I was a kid, they have a TV show, and there's some kid and his robot pounding around getting into some nonsense. That's one of my little wishes for this. Jason and Chopper just getting into all kinds of mischief and trouble and getting yelled at by Hera or whoever, or General Akbar. What are you doing? Get out of that trap.
That would be great. That'd be a great show. It's got to be so cool. And in a show like Rebels, we'd probably see a little bit more of Jason and Chopper running around like that. It's great to see Hera interacting with Jason immediately after the senatorial scene because, we didn't mention in the senatorial scene, she talks about having gone up against Thrawn already. And she specifically talks about how he has killed family to her, meaning Kanan. I mean, there's nobody else but Kanan. And it's fine that she says that. Obviously, they never had a label. They weren't married. It wasn't, my husband or whatever. And he killed my boyfriend would be a super weird way to deliver the line. So family is totally appropriate here. But just getting to hear about Kanan's sacrifice, the indirect mention of him on screen, and how much Thrawn as a threat means to Hera. Because she wants to find Ezra. This is not a find Ezra alone kind of thing. She is worried about the threat Thrawn poses to the galaxy. We know Ahsoka basically, so if Sabine's all the way in it for Ezra, and Ahsoka's all the way in it to stop Thrawn, Hera's right down the middle, and that she cares about both.
Right.
And that you can see that come through here. And then for her to reference Kanan's death, and then immediately cut to their kid, it was really, really cool and a really appropriate way to introduce a character that we didn't know how this was going to work out. I mean, green hair, weird-looking eyes, like he looked a little bit goofy in the Rebels model. It's like, how is this going to really translate for us on screen? And it paid off. They did a great job.
Yeah, they did. I bet this actor's so thrilled to be part of this. And then do you think there's going to be more that comes from it? Are we going to hear about the Jedi Jason Syndulla somewhere?
Yeah, we've got to. This foreshadowing of this line is just way too black and white. I mean, Hera looks concerned, but in like a motherly way when he says this. Not like, oh, I don't want him to grow up to be a Jedi, but more like, it's a very dangerous life. But where does he? I don't think he goes to Luke's order. I think we would have heard about that by now.
Maybe she's another apprentice. Maybe he is another apprentice for Ahsoka.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking
we're skipping ahead. That's
kind of. Oh yeah. Something. I don't think. I mean, if I were to put my money on it, I don't think that's a prediction for Ahsoka. I think that's a future property prediction.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So this next scene is one that I cared the most about. I mean, this is just what I wanted to talk about when this show came out. I usually care the most about the New Republic politics stuff, but this exchange between Sabine and Ahsoka is so important. We get a conversation between the two about Sabine's aptitude for the Force, and she talks about how the weapons come naturally, but the aptitude for the Force doesn't. And this scene answers a bunch of questions that we as viewers had going into this.
Yeah, and it's super deep. So, like, do you think that she's kind of like lost her Mandalorian ways in a sense of like she doesn't seem as effective as she should be? Like, I thought she should have kicked Shin Hati's butt back then, and now she's got all these self-doubt and all this other stuff just weighing down on her. It seems to me like it should be, not that the Force should come more natural to her, but like the can-do attitude should come to a lot better.
I'll say that I think that a lot of what makes up the Mandalorians is their armor. I mean, she can't even fight. Not that a Mandalorian is only their armor, but if you're training to fight with armor on, you can't use any of your same tactics. When that armor can withstand lightsabers, so you're using your forearm to block lightsabers, not like if you're not wearing armor, you can flow into your normal fighting style, you're going to get your arm cut off. And so I think part of that was why Shin pieced her up so fast. But I also think you're right. It was clear she kind of put the Mandalorian thing down for a little while. given that she picked up the lightsaber before she picked up the armor. And we saw from the beginning of this episode, I don't think she got very far with her training in Ahsoka. Like,
Right.
they weren't together. They couldn't have been together that long just by the sheer amount of time that's passed. But she really didn't get a ton of training, I don't feel like, because of the dialogue at the beginning. And so, this scene, man, was really important to me because it answered a lot of the questions about Sabine's Force sensitivity, because I had a lot of questions going into this from the trailer, going into this from the first 2 episodes. You know, I really felt definitively that Rebels kind of told us Sabine is not Force sensitive. And so it had me scratching my head on how is she going to be wielding the Force. You know, we had allusions to that in the first 2 episodes, and then it's direct here that she is expected to be wielding the Force. And I'll say currently where we're sitting, she is Schrodinger's Sabine. Because until we see her use the Force on screen, she is Force sensitive and not Force sensitive at the same time. Like, all the potential's there, all the characters believe in her, everything's pointing to the fact that she's going to be Force sensitive in some meaningful way where it's going to need to come in clutch. But it just hasn't happened yet. And there's no evidence other than the other character's belief that it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I almost say that's like too easy, that there's going to be some clutch moment where the Force comes in handy. It seems to me, this is what good writers do, is they lead us down this false path and then surprise us with what the better idea they've come up with. And I can see it both ways, of some either clutch moment of some Force deal, or she's coming back into her own Mandalorian Jedi combo thing. Mm-hmm. They're either doing this easy mind trick on us where it's like she didn't move the cup and she can tell she's straining. She's not connecting with the lightsaber stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think we will see her connect with some sort of combat ability where she's becomes her previous self even more. But they're doing a good job of maybe tricking me into thinking that there's some sort. I'm in between. Is she going to become this really cool Padawan able to come into her own, or is she going to revert to some sort of Mandalore thing? And the training and focus are truly what define her success.
Right. So her Force sensitivity left me in a real weird spot this week, and after this episode left me in a really weird spot today, because I fully accept the new canon. I like the new canon. I love a bunch of what Disney's put out with Star Wars. I defend the Rise of Skywalker, this, that, and the other. But George Lucas's interpretation of Star Wars still explicitly matters to me. He's the creator of Star Wars. What he says, especially about the Jedi and mysticism and the Force, is really what goes for me. And so seeing Dave Filoni come in and do something like this person who had no Force sensitivity whatsoever come in and start to be a Jedi makes me scratch my head and say, where are you coming from here, Dave? Because I trust Dave Filoni, but it's like, where are you getting this? And so we at Star Wars Station do the work so you don't have to. I spent so much time combing through some George Lucas interviews to try and justify what's going on here, and I totally found it. And what I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you an Ahsoka quote, and then I'm going to talk to you about what George says about this. And they pretty much line up one for one. Like, I think Dave ripped Ahsoka's line of dialogue from a George Lucas interview. And so Ahsoka is telling Sabine, when Sabine says, why doesn't everyone just use the Force? Ahsoka says, talent is a factor, but training and focus are what truly define someone's success. All right, so that's Ahsoka's quote. On StarWars.com's oral history of Star Wars Episode 1, George is talking about the nature of the conflict between the Jedi and the Sith. So this is just for context. But for our purposes, only a small excerpt from his whole discussion matters. And so this is the George Lucas quote. I'm gonna do my best George Lucas impression for maybe the first sentence, and I guarantee it's gonna fall apart. In The Phantom Menace, Palpatine was... No, that's not a good George Lucas. I can't do a good George Lucas.
Fine to me.
Palpatine was the one Sith Lord. Now, anyway, this is his quote. In The Phantom Menace, Palpatine was the one Sith Lord that was left standing, and he went through a few apprentices before he was betrayed. And that really has to do with certain talent and genes that allow you to be better at what you're doing than other people. People have a tendency to confuse it. Everybody has the Force. Everybody. You have the good side and you have the bad side. And as Yoda says, if you choose the bad side, it's easy because you don't have to do anything. Maybe kill a few people, cheat, lie, steal, lord it over everybody. But the good side is hard because you have to be compassionate. You have to give of yourself, whereas the dark side is selfish. And so you have this quote from Lucas. And the most important part of it is people have a tendency to confuse it. Everybody has the Force. Everybody. He talks about talent and genes at the beginning. This is why Palpatine seeks out his apprentices that are strong in the Force. Hu Yang says she would not have been a good candidate for the Jedi Order. Not it's impossible for her to wield the Force, it's the Jedi wouldn't have gone after her because they would just go after everybody. They only go after people who show a talent for this sort of thing. Sabine has no talent. She shows no aptitude for the Force. But straight out of George Lucas's mouth, everybody has the Force. And so Sabine can totally be a Jedi. She just might be the worst one in history.
No, hey, that's amazing. And you're right. It sounds like that quote was from Ahsoka said, and this was exactly what George Lucas was saying. I mean, it fits that philosophy exactly.
And, this would be a lot easier if we had Qui-Gon's midichlorian machine prick Sabine in the finger and say, oh, yeah, you can't be a Jedi. But that's just not how Ahsoka wants to operate. And we get that out of the dialogue between her and Hu Yang. The last little bit I'll say about the Sabine Force sensitivity thing. We have some more to talk about her training, but on her Force sensitivity is that the easiest thing for me to think about and imagine Sabine in this situation is she is probably as Force sensitive as Chirrut Imwe. That dude, no one can say that he was not in touch with the Force whatsoever. You see him walking through that desert in Rogue One with all the explosions. I'm one with the Force is with me. You can't say that Chirrut Imwe did not feel the Force deeply, but he could not move things with his mind. He didn't have the talent, but he was an average guy who tapped into his spirituality and was able to find a connection with the Force. And to me, that seems like what Ahsoka's asking Sabine to do. Right. And really, I think that lends credence to what you were saying is the Force may not manifest itself with Sabine moving stuff around with her mind, but it could manifest in a sense of calm and centering in her and improving her already inherent abilities.
And narrowing it down, putting it exactly that way, that is going to come into a clutch moment that is going to deliver some amazing results.
Yeah, I mean it is gonna be great, and I do expect something like that to happen. The last little bit of dialogue between Ahsoka and Sabine was, I thought, really important because she says, not everyone can handle the discipline it takes to master the Force. The line itself is not important, but she's just totally used to dealing with super hard-headed people like Anakin Skywalker and goading them into doing things. And this is just, so dealing with a Mandalorian, if you can handle Anakin Skywalker for more than 12 hours, you will be able to handle any Mandalorian in the galaxy. And so she's just using these kind of techniques that are only going to work on a Mandalorian, which is, some people just don't have the discipline to be a Jedi. Yeah. Sips out of her teeth.
When you know exactly what a Mandalorian is going to go do next.
Right. Yeah. The conversation, look, just this whole scene alone, I think every single line was packed with hidden meaning and deeper dialogue and mirroring other lines that we've heard. And this may be why so far I liked this one the best, including the dogfight. But this scene right here just gave us a lot of important information to stand on and just an insight into how Ahsoka feels right now. Just her as a person in general, where she's at with her headspace.
Right.
Hu Yang says the Jedi Order wouldn't have accepted Sabine, like we already talked about. He also says historically there have been very few Mandalorian Jedi. We talked about, Tar Vizsla and I guess one or two others, but we don't know who they are yet. But that whole conversation, that whole point of that right there, the Jedi Order never would have taken her. Oh, there's not very many Mandalorians in the Jedi Order. Hu Yang, again, exists for Ahsoka to bounce as a story device. He exists for Ahsoka to bounce philosophical, what the Jedi Order means to her ideas. It is his whole reason he's in this show is for her to wrestle with her place in the galaxy, with her place in the Jedi Order or outside of the Jedi Order. And Dave's brilliant for just putting him in here because it is a necessary question to answer with Ahsoka is how is she grappling with her past?
Yeah, and Ahsoka even says here to Hu Yang in this dialogue, I don't need her to be a Jedi. I needed her to be herself. And so being able to connect those dots is going to be a big deal.
And so that ties to what we were talking about earlier about the differences between Ahsoka and Kanan's training. Is Kanan was trying not to get her to be a Jedi, but to train like a Jedi. Then he realized, she needs to be training like a Mandalorian. And it feels like Ahsoka is saying this, but she's not delivering. She's still making Sabine train like a Jedi. And maybe Sabine just needs to train like a Mandalorian. Obviously she needs to connect with the Jedi in some way, but Ahsoka still, despite how much she's pushing against Hu Yang about being the non-traditional part of the Jedi Order, Ahsoka's still maybe trying to fit Sabine too much into the Padawan mold.
Yeah.
Which, that might be where we come down to a big character moment. I just thought of this, but Shin Hati's got the braid. Baylan is very clearly making her go through some Jedi Padawan stuff. And that might be where we start to see Ahsoka kind of come to the realization, or we see a disconnect between Sabine and Shin. Is Sabine and Shin are both Padawans, but in what capacity are they both Padawans? Like, is Shin really, is she going through things like the trials? And is hers a lot more structured and similar to the old Jedi Order? I think that's going to be an interesting mirror in the future.
It's going to be very interesting. And, how deep are they going to go on that? Do they have some anti-Jedi Order he's wanting to start? I mean, he's wanting so much more power that he thinks Thrawn is going to be able to deliver somehow. So, and then he's out there seeking out Force-sensitive people to do what they're doing, and it's super interesting.
I saw an interesting theory about what Baylan's after online. I can't take any credit for this, but maybe the power he's after has nothing to do with Thrawn and has everything to do with the ruins of the Lothal Jedi Temple that are on the Chimera that Palpatine used in the episode before the end. And
That'd be interesting.
They might still, they should still be on there. We have no reason to think they wouldn't. Why Ezra and Thrawn wouldn't have used them, we'll have to get an answer for that. But he may be seeking those instead of Thrawn.
That'd be interesting. What do you think about this line between from Hu Yang to Ahsoka? Well, suppose you do come from a long line of non-traditional Jedi.
Man, I think that is the most apt line he could have delivered.
Because how's it go? That we know of is Anakin to Obi-Wan.
Oh, we've got the whole lineage right ready to go. Because this line, he says so much in this, and he's so right. I mean, this is, no matter how you slice it, she comes from the most non-traditional Jedi lineage of anybody. You start out with, as far as we know, Yoda.
Right.
Grandmaster of the Order, 900 years old, one of the most powerful Jedis ever.
And then Count Dooku.
And then Dooku, another exceptionally powerful Jedi, but had super individualistic and idealistic ideals that led him out of the Order, and he became a Sith Lord. Super abnormal.
Yeah, super abnormal.
His Padawan, Qui-Gon Jinn, black sheep, mystic of the Order. He is... he turns down a council seat because he can't follow the rules. The council begrudges him. People are always like, is he going to get kicked out of the Order? Non-traditional Jedi.
You got to go deal with this trade dispute on Naboo.
Exactly. Obi-Wan, probably the most normal and typical of anybody in that bunch. I mean, he's just like, when you think of perfect Jedi, maybe not perfect Jedi, but when you think of ideal... that era of the Jedi Order, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi.
A complete embodiment of what the Order stands for.
Right, exactly. At that time. I think Qui-Gon is closer to the ideal Jedi. I think Obi-Wan captures the ideals of the Jedi more.
Right.
So you got Obi-Wan, but still, Obi-Wan's first guy to fight a Sith in 1,000 years, and he's the guy who trained the Chosen One.
Right.
And so, also... abnormal. I mean, just because he's Mr. Perfect and he's a cookie-cutter Jedi does not mean that he doesn't have a crazy backstory.
Extremely pivotal role in the fate of the galaxy.
Right. And then Ahsoka's master. I mean, the Chosen One and a pupil at a super old age. Like, just both of those things make him an abnormal Jedi. Yeah. Either one of them would make him an abnormal Jedi.
Capable of feats that other Jedi couldn't even fathom.
Right. And then she left the Order. I mean, it's just like every single one. And obviously they are because they're all the main characters. But it's a lineage of Jedi. Non-traditional is maybe the most polite way to describe Yoda's Padawan lineage from Count Dooku on. I mean, if Yoda looks back in his history of training Padawans, he's got to look at that line and be like, man, those were some powerful people that went nuts.
And did a lot of crazy things in the story. And like it's crazy things to come with Thrawn. It's going to be
Yeah,
glad we're here.
We're never gonna lose this Jedi family tree. I don't think they're just always gonna keep someone's gonna get trained.
Sabine is a completely non-traditional Jedi. She'll be, maybe they'll say it if it like, assuming she is a bona fide Jedi, and there's no reason to say she's not, right? Mm-hmm. Padawan, 100% Force user. We're going to find out which. My money's on it at this point, based on what
she'll
you
use
said.
the Force somehow, yeah.
But it'll grow. She'll grow into that ability, and like she's going to be the first Mandalorian Jedi in how many years? Not counting Grogu.
Right, Grogu withstanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So the next little bit, we get through all. I mean, it's just that was like a 3-minute scene. And we just spent maybe 20 minutes talking about it because it was so important. But we get next to them in the cockpit where Hera's delivering the bad news that she did not get the Senate's approval. And Sabine loses it. She is outraged when Hera even says the words, the Senate Council. And this outrage mirrors exactly Kanan's outrage about joining the rebellion in the first place, about taking their little cell of rebels on Lothal and fitting it together in a bigger picture, because Kanan obviously had the terrible history of being in a military, being a Jedi on the front lines in the Clone Wars, and just being involved with the command structure, and he's like, I do not want this. And he was worried it was going to compromise how their family operates and how their family made decisions that was best for them and also helped people along the way. And Sabine now feels the exact same way. She feels undercut by Hera the same way Kanan did, because Hera's like, we've got to be part of the bigger picture. Again, she's saying we got to be part of the bigger picture. We got to be part of the New Republic. And the New Republic is the thing hampering what they're trying to do. Sabine only cares about Ezra. She doesn't. Obviously, she cares about the galaxy, but she doesn't really care that much about Thrawn coming back, as near as much as she cares about seeing Ezra come back. And so this is really hard for her to stomach.
And she's always had that anti-authoritarian streak. So that probably manifesting just a little bit here.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
What? You mean the government wants to help us, says they're going to help us out? Is it going to?
The next part that we get, man, this is just it. This is quintessential Star Wars. Like I said at the very beginning, I am so happy we got a space battle like this. I loved every minute of the dogfight.
And it hits all the marks, doesn't it?
I'm putting
it
in
really
the top
does.
5 Star Wars dogfights for me. I mean, maybe not the top 5 Star Wars space battles. We got Rogue One, and we got Revenge of the Sith, and Return of the Jedi, and all these great giant fleet space battles. But when you're talking dogfights, this is up there, man.
It was better than anything in The Mandalorian, and it had a couple, right?
Yes, yeah. This is the first dogfight in a TV show that's really stuck out to me. Luthen's thing was super cool, but it was like a little bit, and it was also against a capital ship. I mean, this is just a true, dedicated dogfight, all the way up to the fact that these are clearly just P-51 Mustangs upside down. I mean, this was the perfect and clear homage to George's original inspiration for Star Wars, which was World War II plane dogfights. Yeah. That's what these are. These are World War II airplanes.
Exactly, and I can't wait for the Lego sets for these to come out. They look akin to General Grievous's ship, the Belbulab, whatever. So they're probably a Belbulab. I'm probably saying that wrong. A similar style ship, and I almost want to go out on a limb. And they're kind of decrepit. They're beat up. Mm-hmm. I wonder if there's a lot. These are left over from the Clone Wars somehow.
Yeah. That's a good thought. They are. I mean, they're not like what we normally see coming from the Empire. I mean, these are piecemeal ships. And these guys aren't the Empire, but they obviously are aligned with the Empire.
I mean, even Shin Hati has the headgear that Anakin wore.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Very
These
cool
totally
callback.
come from the Clone War. They have to. They're totally. Whenever we get... That will probably never be mentioned on screen, but in a visual dictionary somewhere,
right.
We're totally going to get that confirmation. You know, Merrick and Shin showing off some proficient piloting skills. That's just important to note. Not all Jedi are pretty good pilots. These guys are real good pilots.
Yeah, I'm slightly disappointed at the targeting setup isn't the same or somewhat similar to what's on the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, you're right.
Or even like X-Wing stuff or something like that. You know, slightly different somehow. But you could tell this
it's pretty wholly
somebody put their iPad in there and has a really premium display.
Right. I was rewatching Light and Magic, the documentary about Industrial Light and Magic, and they were talking about how the first digital effects they ever did were the Death Star run in A New Hope, where they show the bomb being dropped in the middle of the Death Star, and it's just super cool. So I had watched Light and Magic a couple years ago, but now having recently rewatched it, seeing how it matches up with all the brand new effects and the volume and all of that, it's so cool to see how far this franchise has come, and that this franchise has always been pushing the boundaries on that stuff.
It really has, and this scene is no different. I mean, same kind of gunner scenes that we've seen from A New Hope. You know, you could sub these in for TIE fighters, but not. They're a little more rigid, it seems like to me. And they're not, you know, Sabine isn't just gunning them down straight up. She's got to she's got to get back into the seat, get back into the swing of things. And another thing that's really cool in this scene is we hear Marok speak for the first time.
Yes.
And you can tell it's the typical voice behind a helmet thing, right? It's growly. It's not exactly. It's a modulated, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just a tone. And so is this guy Sam Witwer or what? Voicing this?
I don't know. It's
lots of discussion online about that.
You know, I think it may be. We have more to say about it in a second, because I want to say something about it here in just a minute. But I do think that it is. I didn't watch the credits this time. Did you? I meant to, and then I just didn't. So I really do want to check the credits out at some point to see who voiced Merrick, because you know, we'll be able to figure that out. But I forgot to watch them initially, just on accident. But we will figure that out to see who the voice actor is for Merrick at this point. But what I want to say some more about the dogfight is one of the most important aspects of this dogfight that made it so good for me and made it stand out is that they have unique sounds and unique looks to the engines and to the guns, to everything. All of the aesthetics of this episode are right in line with what you think of when you think of Star Wars' audio and visual language. They have a unique sound for the TIE Fighter and for the X-Wing and for different blasters. Everybody's blaster sounds different. I mean, it's just, they have a bunch of unique sounds for this stuff to show us, bam, right there, this is what you need to know. This is what this thing sounds like. This thing doesn't sound like anything you've ever heard before. It may sound a little bit like some airplane, but it's got a unique sound. And as I've said it 100 times on here, one of my largest gripes with the sequel trilogy was the lack of the aesthetics having any visual or auditory evolution from the original trilogy. This is sandwiched between those two things, but very, very clearly is setting itself apart as unique, with unique sounds, with unique visuals.
Yeah, that's an extremely salient point there. They missed the mark on those sequels a little bit with that. And we get in this, in what, a 5-6 minute dogfight, all these extra things that they did. And it caught me off guard, the sounds that they did, but it's so welcome to see that that's so much more enhanced than what it was in other efforts.
Yeah, no, I mean, I obviously agree. And what I think they do best is not just in this little dogfight scene, but everything they did is screaming the Star Wars visual language that we talk about. They have the droids in the hyperspace ring. They look great. They look unique. They look brand new. We see the aliens on the New Republic vessel. It looks like the Rebellion. It's not all full of humans. I mean, it's just like they really, really got this. They really, really just landed it. Landed the plane. Dave Filoni understood where he needed to go, and he got us there with the visual language of Star Wars. He just put us in the driver's seat and got us exactly where we wanted to be with it. It's wonderful. I could not be happier with the visuals and the sounds in this episode specifically. It feels like Star Wars and unique at the same time.
And it's also with the turbo lasers that start shooting at them right after this, too.
With the AA gun look. They got the puffs of smoke, you know. I thought that was pretty funny and cool. I didn't have any kind of problem with it because it's like, you know, the flak up there or whatever. But that's not something I think they did any other time when the turbo lasers are shooting at the Death Star. But I think it was cool. It was a neat touch. And it really, really lent to the fact that these look like airplanes. And this is a lot like a real airplane dogfight.
It really is.
So, you know, we see them go through the hyperspace ring, get shot, but not shot down. They're just derelict for a second. And Shin says to Morgan Elspeth on the comm, she goes, "You almost got them. We'll take it from here." And then they cut to Elspeth, and she looks like she's like about to cry, or she's like about to just scream with rage. I mean, they do a profile shot of her face, and she looks distraught. And it makes me really wonder how important is the person they're serving. Like, they are jockeying with favor so much with the person they're serving. And I'm not ready to just say it is out and out Thrawn, because they're just all haven't connected in that way. And they have people who commissioned to save Elspeth, but it wasn't Thrawn because Elspeth's the one who's communing with Thrawn. And we've got just all these moving pieces, and I'm not ready to say that we know that they're all even serving the same master, but the way that Elspeth reacts to having that kill taken out from under her makes me really, really wonder what the repercussions might be for them failing, or for them not being the one that brings them in. They're all very clearly jockeying, and they don't like each other, which is a long tradition on the dark side.
Yeah. And is it something simple like just glory the kill, you know? I really love there's something I was going to say about these scenes with, I'm totally blanking on what it is, but that I really love the close-up zoom in on the faces, dogfight aspect, repairing the ship. Oh, that's what it was, the spacewalk.
Yeah.
We're too early to talk about that.
No, this is it. Let's talk about it.
This is the cartoony thing that you
It is.
can't, that connects it to the Rebels cartoon, right?
Yeah.
And she's even got the special spacesuit helmet that goes over her
The Leku helmet.
Leku helmet things, and the determination on her face is really cool. I can't imagine the gumption it takes to don a spacesuit, put it on as fast as that is, and go out amongst these
and do flips in space.
Well, she takes them out. She
Yeah,
takes out a
yeah.
red shirt, and the other ones are too scared to come back.
She's a regular old Rey, man. I mean, she jumps up, cuts that wing off, just like Rey. But for real, it's really cartoony, and there's no two ways around it. I mean, she floats in front of the cockpit. Hey, did you fix the ship yet? Like, it's just,
come get me up.
it's straight out of the Clone Wars. I mean, it could just be pulled right out of the show, and it's so much. There's so much CGI that it basically is pulled right out of the show.
Yeah, it's super fun.
But it's a good thing. Exactly. Star Wars has cartoony elements. It has levity. It has humor. This was a great way to use it, and it felt like it had a place here. I saw some complaints online from some of those YouTubers that are always going to be complaining about everything.
Heroes have to do heroic things.
Yeah, exactly. They hated on this, and it's like, man, what do you want them to do? Like, that isn't that ridiculous. It's not that cartoony. It makes fine sense. I don't know. I really liked it. When I saw it, I liked it. I don't have a negative thing to say about it.
It's over the top badassery to get them out of a terrible situation that if she didn't do something like that, they were sitting ducks and were going to die. Mm-hmm. And so I'm all for it. And you're never going to convince me otherwise.
Yep, I absolutely agree. So they go back to the planet. They start running into the Purgils, into all the fog and the clouds down there. Running into the Purgils is clearly exciting for Sabine. I mean, the faces she's making when she sees them, she's like super excited because it's just a sign about Ezra. I mean, that's very clearly to her that this is an Ezra thing.
Yep. Very cool things. I want to make some joke about there not being a, this is a chase scene, right? Mm-hmm. And the most iconic Star Wars spaceship chase scene involved a Sonic Mine. What was that from Boba Fett and
Oh
Obi-Wan?
yeah. I don't know what they're called, but yeah, the Sonic Mine.
Yeah.
People know the thing in Attack of the Clones. Yeah, people know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So obviously they're not going to do that to a Purrgil, but these things are obviously dangerous, right? I wouldn't want to. You have to be a Sabine level pilot to fly around these things.
Right. The shots of the Purrgil, one of them, I think. I mean, it's like, if it's an homage, it's a small one, but it looks like the Exegorth from The Empire Strikes Back when it tries to jump out and bite the Millennium Falcon. Right. They look a lot like that. The whole Purrgil fight thing is cool. There's not like a lot of information gleaned from it other than Purrgils are on this place, and then Hu Yang gives us a lot more exposition here in a minute.
Right.
So they go down, they land in the forest, they hide in the forest pretty effectively from Shin and Merrick. And so this is where we really start to hear Merrick speak, and he says a few more lines of dialogue, and, you know, we got the guy talking, and it still didn't lend us that many clues. Like we said, we don't know who the voice actor is behind.
I looked it up.
You found it?
Yeah,
okay.
I found it in the credits. It's a guy named Paul Darnell.
Paul Darnell. I don't know anything about Paul Darnell, but he's
credited
credited as the voice for Merrick. So that means that Sam Witwer, all those clues and people wondering. Well, I don't know if we talked about it on last week or not, but for people who don't know, around the internet, people discovered that Sam Witwer was credited on a voice credit as just a miscellaneous voice actor, and that people speculated that meant he was Merrick. Well, Sam Witwer's like credited as a random voice actor on every Star Wars product because he usually provides random voices all the time because they've got go-tos that they go to. And SAG-AFTRA, the acting union, requires that actors be credited for named roles. And so I think we would have seen if he were voicing Merrick at that point. And so now we clearly know it's that Paul Darnell guy.
Right, yeah, it's in the credits.
And so this doesn't kill the Starkiller theory or the Sam Witwer is playing Merrick theory. But at least the modulated voice is not his voice. It's Paul Darnell's voice. And that could definitely be because they did not want to tip their hand that it was Sam Witwer because they have to credit him.
Right.
And so they might have done a modulated other guy's voice so when he takes the mask off and sounds different, it's easily explainable.
Right. And Paul Darnell is a bona fide stuntman. We found this out on Wikipedia. He is the stunt double for Cobb Vanth in Mandalorian season 2, and does then he might not even be the voice. Then is he? He could just be credited as the guy in the costume, the acrobatics, right?
Yeah.
You know, and we didn't see that in the first 2 episodes, right? That people we'd heard some discussion about that, but
and he's credited in the first 2 episodes, and Merrick doesn't say a word.
Yeah.
So he probably is just the guy in the suit. So that leaves the voice still way up in the air.
Yeah.
It's who the lineage, who the character actually is. Of course, we have no idea. Right.
Outside of the name, but
I'm gonna say I'm still not ready to determine who Merrick is. I don't have any good theories that nobody hadn't heard already. I mean, there's a bunch of theories bouncing around out there, all kinds. I mean, some just flat ridiculous, but others, I mean, there's a few that I like or that I'm like, oh, that makes sense or whatever. And so
him being Luke is the craziest one, right?
yeah. That would be nuts. But Merrick is I've got 2 things I want to say that just kind of hold up the 2 arguments that I've heard that I don't like the best, but that maybe are the most compelling. And one of them is that Merrick is a knight in Arthurian myth that is turned into a wolf. I saw the original thing that I saw referencing this was someone said that he's turned into a wolf by a woman named Morgan. I could never find that part. Where I looked at the actual myth. I read the real myth that
somebody made that up.
Yeah, it says he's turned into a wolf by his wife, and his wife is an unnamed character.
Yeah,
and so the Morgan part was not true. But everything else is true. Merrick is a knight in Arthurian mythology turned into a wolf. We know how much Dave Filoni likes his wolves. And so who are knights and who are good guys that could be turned into a bad guy?
And look at his helmet. He's wearing a black knight
Yeah, he does. Yeah, actually, he does look like a knight. And he has a visor that looks like it comes up like a knight. But it could be Ezra, it could be Barriss. Those are the people that fit the MO of a good guy turned into this by someone else. Right. Turned into a wolf or a bad guy by somebody else. And so that supports that theory a little bit. The Barriss one, I'm fine with. I don't think it's Barriss because we very clearly heard a man's modulated voice through his helmet. but also I wouldn't like for it to be Ezra. I mean, they've got to explain how he would have gotten here and Thrawn didn't, and also I think that really undermines a lot of Ezra's journey in Rebels, so I hope he doesn't, it's not Ezra, but that backs that up a little bit. The other thing I'll say is that someone posted today the non-canon DLC of The Force Unleashed. And in the non-canon DLC, Starkiller fights Luke on Hoth wearing a mask. And in that scene, those voices sound identical. I mean, it's like so famously, Starkiller is not only voiced by, but is modeled after Sam Witwer. Like, right. Starkiller just is Sam Witwer. And so that really, really leans me in the direction of this really could be Starkiller. Because I'm telling you, I was not on that train. I think it would have been cool. I was never going to be upset if it was Starkiller, but I was never like, yeah, it probably is him. But now, if I had to put money on it, I'd say Starkiller. Because it sounds, I never would have said this if I hadn't seen this video, but having seen this video, it sounds identical. Go look up non-canon DLC, The Force Unleashed, Luke Skywalker, and it will come up, and your mind will be blown by how exactly like Sam Witwer Merrick sounds in these scenes.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing if it comes out. So what would the implications of that be? I mean, like, what to explain for all the people who don't know that, what I've never played those games.
So in the old expanded universe, like we referenced earlier, Sam Witwer plays Starkiller in the Force Unleashed video games. He does the mocap, and he's the inspiration for the character, and he does the voice. And so Starkiller is Darth Vader's apprentice in the old expanded universe. Darth Vader takes on a Sith apprentice to eventually overthrow Palpatine in secret. He gets found out, and Starkiller joins the rebellion. He helps form the rebellion. That's all in the first game. The second game is way crappier. It's short, and it's like about his clone or whatever. It's kind of goofy. But
this would be Darth Vader's long-lost apprentice.
Exactly. That's the
rediscovered
important part,
apprentice.
is that this would somehow be Darth Vader's apprentice. Not like the Inquisitorius, which Darth Vader trained them, but like his direct was going to be a Sith with Darth Vader apprentice. And that would, the reason that has such big implications, aside from him just being Darth Vader's apprentice, is that interaction with Ahsoka would be huge, because you have Anakin's apprentice versus Darth Vader's apprentice.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's the big why people would want this to be Starkiller, is because you get to see both of his apprentices go toe-to-toe.
Yeah, that'd be so fun.
Yeah.
I kind of want to lean into the Luke thing from Last Command.
It's
a joke. It's dumb. I'm not.
But it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
But this, and obviously it wouldn't be named Luke, but, if Balin's skull is Sabaoth, and he has some apprentice person out there, and we haven't seen his face being a clone.
Right.
I don't know. It seems like a stretch, and I believe that, but
we know that
I'd like to be surprised too.
The Emperor has Luke's hand on Exegol. We have that confirmed by a comic book.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Very cool.
The Emperor has Luke's DNA still, just like he did in the expanded universe. So, not completely out of the realm of possibility. We're near the end, and we have Hu Yang giving us some exposition on the hyperspace ring. Last week we said, that's pretty much a hyperspace ring. Would be weird if it wasn't, and it is. It was confirmed that way. And Hu Yang talks about the Jedi Archives talked about intergalactic hyperspace lanes following Purgil migration patterns, which is super cool.
Yeah.
And is the confirmation just as explicit as possible that we're headed to a new galaxy, and just all of the exposition that Hu Yang gives. We're going to get some big history here, man. We're going to get some Star Wars galaxy history soon.
And I mean, if this episode is any indication for what we talked about just today, it's just going to get deeper and deeper and deeper.
Oh, it's going to be ground shaking.
Yeah.
It's going to be like our understanding of the Star Wars galaxy in some way is going to be turned on its head after this. I am fully confident about that. We know that the Jedi originate in this galaxy, but there's no telling what came from the other one.
Or who's been there in the past.
Finally, the scene ends with Balin telling some group of people. I mean, these guys, so I was just seeing the scene, and the way they're all standing kind of menacingly, they look like, so one of them, I think, is a real person. Some of them look like HK assassin droids. Most of them look like assassin droids. But the one directly behind Balin like looks like a real person. The way he stands, the way he moves, the way he turns around and walks, like it just doesn't have a very droid fluid motion. And he also is like speaking and not in a modulated voice. And so I think that he's a real guy. There's some HK droids mixed with some real people. My question is, who are these people? Why are they there? And the other thing that I thought of, the more of an observation, is they are all standing in a way that makes me wish they were the Knights of Ren. That makes me wish that we were somehow tying the sequels and the Knights of Ren into this. Because the Knights of Ren existed way before Kylo Ren did. And so I would really have liked to seen some kind of tie through that. But we got to figure out who these people are at some point.
Talon cards, conscripted henchmen.
Yeah, good idea. And then the show ends in what I thought was a little bit of a weird choice, in that it's just Balin contemplatively looking off into this like stormy deal. And that look, one, with Ray Stevenson's passing, just that lingering scene on him gives a lot of weight to that shot. And then it also, I think, when we come back and revisit this show all the way at the end and we get Balin's full story, just seeing some emotional long shot of him like that, we're going to know what he's thinking about, and it's going to mean a lot.
I have a theory, and it's going to be what I talk about in our segment.
Okay, well, we are so close to that, because the very last thing I will say about this episode is that somebody, it's not even about this episode, it's about the show in general, is that somebody on Reddit graciously and awesomely, Star Wars fans are the best people in the world, they translated all of the old runic Sith language on the end credits scene. And that guy was U/AJ-Neb97. So thanks, U/AJ-Neb97, for translating this. Big help. You're doing a yeoman's job, yeoman's work for everybody. But he translated all the names in the runic language on the end credits scene, and it's all different Star Wars planets. Some of which we've heard of, most of which we've been to, and some of which we haven't been to yet or haven't heard of yet.
Yeah, the Peridia is on there, right?
Peridia is the very last one. It's where all of the lines culminate together, which is just super. This is a lot of clues to me. I mean, there's Lothwolfs, there's Purgils, and all of the planets on here have some kind of significance. Arcana, which we saw already in the first episode. Irony, which we have not seen yet. Garel from Rebels, Lothal from Rebels, Mandalore is listed on here. Agamar, which is kind of a weird mention from Rebels because it was in one episode, the completely random where Rex fights the droids for the last time episode. That's the planet they were on. Dathomir, Yavin, obviously those are super important to the show. Corellia, we've already been to. Cato Nemoidia, Duro, and Pisana, all real weird ones that I was like, I wonder why any of those would be mentioned. Coruscant, Cetos, the planet we were on in this episode, Odin, spelled O-D-Y-N, and another planet, ?ONNA. And these are the last two planets on a line that directly leads you to Peridia. And so the end of it goes Cetos to Odin to Anna to Peridia. And so I don't think we're visiting all these planets in this show, but all of these planets have some kind of significance to the show.
Yeah, I wonder what the middle two are between Cetos and Peridia is. That's super interesting.
I don't know, and I don't know if we'll have to stop off there, if they're in the other galaxy, if they're in our galaxy. If you look at the projection map from the previous two episodes, there's like a little point of light leaving the known galaxy, the galaxy far, far away, we'll call it. Leaving that galaxy for the new galaxy. Well, I mean, if we got to name the galaxies, that's a pretty good name for that one. So the GFFA leading to the Peridia galaxy, there's a little blip as soon as you exit GFFA before you get to the new one, and maybe one of those planets is that.
Right.
They're like the bridge planets, maybe.
Right.
You got to stop off in that one, get to the next one, and then you're in the new galaxy, and then you can get to Peridia from there. Yeah. Maybe. That's, that is totally me riffing on the spot with that one. But that wraps up our coverage of this episode. A long, good hour and a half talking about a 35-minute Ahsoka episode.
And I think we nailed it. I mean, it is that deep.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We could talk
on.
for hours more about just scenes in this and what they mean. So I hope we covered it to the everyone's satisfaction. But now we're going to get to do a little bit of irresponsible speculation. We're going to get wild with our theories. One of the best things about being a Star Wars fan is getting to theorize about what's coming next, what's happening next. And so we're going to jump into our segment where we get to do that, which is Always in Motion.
Difficult to see. Always in motion is the future.
All right, Colin. I have to admit, I don't have very many predictions beyond the predictions I gave last episode, because most of my predictions for this episode were wrong. And so, but they weren't like not going to happen. They were just, I didn't expect this kind of interlude episode here. And so everything that I talked about, and I'll reiterate in a minute, is all probably just going to happen next episode. So what do you have that's going to be off the wall?
We hope it happens next episode.
It'd be so weird if it didn't. It wouldn't make any sense if some of the things we talked about didn't. They have to. I mean, some of them just based on the background. You're like, come on.
So we're all that previous supposition was based off of our anxiousness over what's going to happen next, and based off of scenes we've seen in the trailer. And I think we've even seen several scenes from the trailer in this one, but there's just a few left. And it's of the confrontation between Ahsoka and Baylan, talking about Anakin, and Shin versus Sabine, and Merrick in the mix somewhere. And I remember in the last predictions we talked about that too. But just in our discussions on and off podcast, these interactions, I think, are just the looks on people's faces, like we were talking about previously. They're just going to be so much more weighty to this. And part of me thinks, like, is this just going to be all the season is, and it ends with them traveling to another galaxy and picking up Thrawn? That doesn't seem like the mark. It's going to hit the mark to me. But how do we get from where there's a confrontation between Ahsoka and Baylan, and whatever the result of that is, to some sort of confrontation and finality, be it whether they lick their wounds and walk away and Thrawn is just back and we're going to deal with that next season or in a movie, or he's dealt with, like left in the other universe and recovering Ezra somehow. So, I mean, there's just a lot to that. And if I had to guess what's weighing on Baylan Skoll's mind, it's something like, he's got a Padawan. He's got Merrick. And like he said in the last episode, it sure would hate to lose Ahsoka. There's not many Jedi left. And so that look, I'm saying, is the forlorn anticipation of that confrontation, that he has to do something he doesn't want to do, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you could go down a huge rabbit hole with that, but that's what we're watching the show for. I guess if I had to make a hard prediction, it's that, I don't know, they're going to stow away on the hyperspace ring or something like that,
Yeah.
That I don't think, this is the typical thing. They got to hit the low point before they can rise to the top. Mm-hmm. And they're going to face this gauntlet of red shirts or black shirts, I guess, for the bad guys or something. I don't know. But they're not going to be able to pass the final boss, and so they're going to have to load their save game up and get after it again. Right. But this is what's going to galvanize Sabine, right? To maybe probably have some final confrontation with Elsbeth or something.
Yeah.
And because this is a complete out of left field. There's going to be some sort of old tie, like the Night Sisters are gone, and maybe their abilities are diminished or something in this galaxy. And when she's in that other one, she's going to be empowered somehow by this, returning or some sort of newfound or long lost energy or something. And it's going to be a fun confrontation between Elsbeth and some of these other people. I kind of doubt she survives the return trip.
No, I think you're right. So you hit everything that I might have said. And then, like I said, most everything I predicted, I think is just going to happen next episode. I mean, we're going to get the fight between Shin and Sabine. We're going to get the fight between Merrick and Ahsoka. We're going to get the fight between Baylan and Ahsoka. I mean, we're going to get a lot of lightsaber fights next scene is my prediction. Or next episode is my prediction. And all of these are going to play out on CTOS. And the end of the episode is probably going to be, like you said, the hyperspace ring leaving. Like, that'll probably be this galaxy. We're piecing out to the galaxy at the end of next episode for a little while. And that's kind of what I expect. Now, my out of left field prediction will be that Hera she's got to get involved somehow in the next episode. I mean, I don't think we've seen any clues of her or Chopper on Cetos, but they're not just going to leave her with the New Republic government. She's going to have to get here somehow. And so I think that maybe they'll attach to the ring with the Ghost or something like that. But that Hera, Sabine, and Ahsoka are going to end up in the new galaxy with Jason Syndulla. I think Jason is going to be there in the thick of everything.
I hope so. I hope that's true. And another small thing is, last time we hope Zeb is in this somehow. Mm-hmm. And but beyond that, a lot of these is guest stars, and there's some minor guest stars of I'm talking about like famous actors or something somehow showing up in these episodes. They're all over the Mandalorian. I think
Jack Black, Lizzo, Machete in the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, and there's a couple even in Obi-Wan. And right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of who you might be talking about. There are some big actors in that. I don't remember any big guests. Oh, Flea. Yeah, we had Flea.
Right.
And there's a couple others. You're right.
So that there hasn't been any in this that I can see. Nothing that's jumped. Nobody's been talking about it, or maybe one of these guys, like they do. There's some famous person in one of these henchman costumes that you can't see their face. Somebody who just want to be part of Star Wars somehow. But I'm kind of anticipating that is who's going to be one of Thrawn's henchmen that's been stuck in the galaxy with him. Some goofy lieutenant who's haven't been put up with him this whole time. is whoever.
No, you're totally right. We're going to have somebody. We're going to have some kind of cameo. I think you're right. So, all right, Colin. Well, that rounds out the Always in Motion segment. That's our predictions going into next week, and we'll see how accurate we are. Now, our next segment is our patron-powered segment. This segment's put on by our Patreon subscribers, where they get to ask us a question, and we're going to roll right into that question on how the Force works.
That's not how the Force works.
All right, Colin, so this question comes from Meatloaf. And Meatloaf has asked us, could we see Cal make an appearance in Ahsoka? Do the timelines line up? What do you think?
You're going to be more knowledgeable on the timelines. He's should be middle-aged, right?
Yeah, I mean he totally would be alive. He would probably be. Well, he'd be just about Ahsoka's age, actually. 40-ish, 50-ish, early 50s, late 40s, that kind of thing. He'd be right around her age. He'd be a slightly younger, but he'd be around her age.
So literally, I think there's probably some contractual deals before he shows up in something like this, right? I mean, we've talked about this several times. That third game has to be made, and then he's going to be.
Well, we don't know that, but I think it's a pretty healthy assumption.
Yeah, and then, I don't see they should do something like that. This is already a puzzle-solving, zapping around the galaxy, going to a new galaxy. The one feature of these games is there's these major, not necessarily galaxy-wide implications, but they have the holocron with all the kids' names on it, and he destroys it at the end. And if he didn't do that, somebody's always going to search for it. Almost fell into the wrong hands, and it would have been a really big deal, right? That could have changed the balance of power. And in the second game, similar themes. And if Thrawn comes back and is successful, it's going to change the balance of power, right? So I think these two stories are very kindred, and he should at least pop up somewhere. But I don't think it's literally going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if I just had to say, is he going to be there? Is he not? The answer is no. Cal's probably not going to appear because, like you said, we assume that there is some contractual obligation for Cameron Monaghan that says you got to be in the first 3 Jedi games and then you can be released to do other Star Wars stuff, because he's an actor and he's mocapped for Cal, and Cal is completely modeled after him. He just is Cal Kestis. They're identical people. And so for him to take on that role, it would have to be probably after that contract. But the way he could reasonably fit into this story, and the timelines totally line up. I mean, we don't know if he's dead or not by the end of the third game, but I would assume he's not. And so the way that these could line up and the way that he could appear in Ahsoka, I think would actually be through Merrin. I just think that the Night Sister contact, the Night Sister thing, if Cal's still kicking around at this time period, Merrin's still kicking around at this time period, and they would connect somehow through Merrin. But really, could this be an interesting place where maybe Merrin and Cal fall on different sides of a conflict? Could maybe Merrin have to side with Elspeth for some unknown reason, and Cal is obviously going to side with these former Jedi? I mean, I don't want to bust their relationship up that we see budding, but it would definitely be an interesting question of where do those two fall in some kind of conflict like this.
Yeah, that'd be so fun.
So I think that's the answer to your question, Loaf. I appreciate you reaching out to us, giving us this question. We love the How the Force Works segment. So head on over to patreon.com/Star Wars Station and ask us another question. Our next segment is always an exciting one. We got some cool stuff to talk about, mostly about Ahsoka, a little bit about The Mandalorian, and that is our HoloNet news segment.
You made the HoloNet.
All right, Colin, we've got 3 stories today. We got four things to talk about, but we're going to combine 2 of them into one. And it's a lot of exciting stuff. And one of them, it starts out worried. And this is the reason we're talking about these 2 stories in conjunction, is that they happened back to back, one day after the other. And it's kind of a funny little thing. And it's also just important that we got these numbers to set the record straight. And so the first thing to say is that the Bespin Bulletin reported that Ahsoka's viewership was lower than The Mandalorian, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and The Book of Boba Fett for its first week. That is super troubling. That would be terrifying. That meant it was just slightly ahead of Andor, and Andor gets a pass because it's a 2-season show designed to win awards, and the other 3 are designed to get viewers. And Obi-Wan and Book of Boba Fett had what some would consider pretty bad numbers, and so Ahsoka being lower than that was really, really worrisome.
Yeah, and that doesn't strike me as 100% true either.
Well, that's the other more exciting side of the story, is that this came out, and I don't want to begrudge Bespin Bulletin reporting on this. I mean, they report rumors, and I think Bespin Bulletin's a great outlet. And so they just got this one wrong, and we have no idea why they got it wrong. And so the exciting other side to it, though, is that StarWars.com came out with the numbers, and it was that Ahsoka drew 14 million views for the first episode, which is massive. I mean, that's huge. That is super exciting, and probably based on that alone, Disney will hit the green light on a second season. I would bet. I mean, I just think that that's a big number up front. And
the nature of the show, that means a majority of those people are going to finish out watching the show too. At least I hope, anyway. The show does have its critics. Obviously, we're not one of them, but
right.
They're just kind of cynical, I think, for silly reasons. But if this many people are watching the show, something's good. They're anticipating it, and I really love the addition of moving it to Tuesdays, so you can sit down after dinner and just enjoy with your family the show.
I know. I wonder who, because we didn't get that opportunity. I mean, we were waking up at 5 a.m. to watch The Mandalorian, and we loved it, and I'd do it again. But it's nice to just get to sit down in an evening, watch something, and also it's cool to sit down and know, every big Star Wars fan, we're all watching this at the exact same time. Like, this isn't something that, I mean, obviously we need to have spoiler warnings, and we need to have a spoiler window and things like that, so people aren't just wantonly spoiling things. But if it's coming out at a reasonable to view time, you have to be a lot less worried about spoilers. Because it coming out at 5 a.m., if you watch it at 5 a.m., you can't go to work the next day and talk to anybody about it because they didn't wake up.
That's the point I was going to make. And there's always going to be hardcore fans who they'll wake up an extra hour early before they go to work and watch it. And so there's, did you watch Ahsoka yet? Well, you're not a true fan. Something like that. Or the temptation to reveal spoilers is not a good thing.
Right.
And so this alleviates all of that, which I really enjoy.
Yeah. And I think it definitely had, it might not have had anything to do with viewership. It had to have a little bit to do with viewership. But
well, I was going to say, if the viewership is down, school is starting in the United States. And for the most part, either right around this time or very soon. And generally,
like sales at my businesses are always down.
Mm-hmm.
People are out getting their haircuts and buying clothes. They don't have time for what I sell. So, it's definitely surely when kids are having to go to bed when this TV show comes on in some cases, or you're too tired at the end of the day, it's not going to be the best time to put a show out there. I don't know. I'm not an executive. I'm probably wrong.
No, I get it. I understand.
But gosh, we love this show a lot. It's
I'm
really
glad
good.
they moved it, and I just want to thank the person who convinced them. With Dave Filoni, some random person in their office who just woke up one day and was like, "Hey, why do we premiere shows at 4 a.m. in our biggest biggest market?" But I'm just whoever did it. Thank you for your service from all of us Star Wars fans from the bottom of our heart. We appreciate you. Colin, our next story to talk about is one that I know you're so excited to hear. You were jumping through the roof when you got this news. I'm positive of it. So you should just tell me, how has it been playing Fortnite with Ahsoka as a skin since August 25th?
That's hilarious, Carter. I actually don't play Fortnite.
I don't think you've never played Fortnite, right? Not a minute of it.
I've watched some streamers play it here and there. It just doesn't.
Well, that didn't answer my question.
No, I've never played it. No,
I played it in season 2 and season 1 and season 2 when it was first made, and then I hadn't played it since.
Yeah, you got to be in tune with the way that game is made and how it operates, and the what do you call those? The last man standing. I'm
Battle royales.
Battle royales. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not good at them. So
I'm just not a gamer. The last time I turned on my Xbox was the day that I finished Jedi Survivor.
Yeah.
And I haven't turned it on since. And you know when I'll turn on my Xbox next? The day that Star Wars Outlaws comes out.
Yeah. So it's cool. I'm glad people get to enjoy this, but the game has its functions. You know, they might have a lightsaber, but it's acting as another weapon in game, and I don't know if they're doing force powers. And
yeah, I think they do add some force powers. I don't know. But she is not even close to the first Star Wars character that's been, Fortnite. This is another thing that people begrudge about the sequels that I would probably begrudge also. I think this is not a good thing. They premiered Palpatine's "I'm back" speech in Fortnite.
And that's considered canon. It's so strange.
It is. It's weird. But the whole thing about the Fortnite game is they've had a lot of Star Wars stuff in it for a couple years now, since then. And I think they've had force powers and lightsabers and yada, yada, yada. But, they got all kinds of stuff in that game. I mean, Marvel superheroes and anime people. And it's just like big IP Battle Royale now, which whatever company makes Fortnite, brilliant. Hats off to you. I mean, you are rolling in cash for however you made. Whatever first deal, their initial deal where they got some big IP to sign with them, snowball effect. I mean, it's every big IP. And every, rapper and celebrity and everyone is on Fortnite now. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, the demand for all these skins and all the different cool things in there is really high, and it's for digital goods. It's crazy. You go back 10 years or maybe 20 at this point. Shows my age a little bit. You go back that far and say, hey, people are going to be spending money to look like, so their character in a game can look like a Star Wars character. They laugh at you.
Right.
But now it's just commonplace.
It is. It's super normal. I mean, it's just, when you can see Patrick Mahomes use a sword to beat the crap out of Anakin Skywalker, it's a pretty fun game. So that's our second to last news story, and our final news story is just a little bit of a news story, but Colin and I, we're not really Star Wars toy collectors that much. We collect Legos both, and I collect a lot of the Star Wars books. I've never been much of an action figure guy, but these look really sharp. And I've got some disparate action figures on my walls, but they're just random. And this might be one that I'll have to pick up. It's Hot Toys has revealed Imperial Praetorian Guards from The Mandalorian in their summer showcase, and they look really good.
From season 3, where they fight, what's his name?
Paz Vizsla, and then Grogu. So you need a Hot Toys Grogu and a Hot Toys Din Djarin to kick their butts too. Yeah, you're right. So I can get it all laid out. But they just look really good. I mean, Hot Toys does a really good job. As I said, we're not steeped in the toy market for Star Wars, and I know there's always all kinds of controversy around the companies that make them or how Hasbro's doing this. I'm not smart enough to know about those controversies. All I'm smart enough to know is these look gorgeous. I mean, these look super, super realistic. They look really good, and I'm very, very excited for them.
Yeah, they do. It'd be fun to play with them. Do they make a Paz Vizsla too?
Oh, I'm sure they do. I think in the promo shot, there's a Paz Vizsla action figure too. Yeah, there is. Yeah, right there. You can see the back of it. So, yeah, I think that one's already been made, but it looks great, man. I'm very happy. Very happy for the toy collectors out there. I hope you guys are excited about those.
In the same article, it talks about they have big plans for stuff in the Ahsoka show, too. So that's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, I'm surprised that we haven't seen a whole lot of Ahsoka toy rollouts yet. I've been looking for an Ahsoka action figure a couple times when I've gone to like Target and Walmart and stuff, and I haven't found one on the shelf yet. And so I'm a little surprised about that. You know, we're three episodes into the show, and I felt like Ahsoka, more than any other Star Wars show, was pretty open about their promo materials. I mean, they put Thrawn in the trailer. Right. It's not something they would have done on any other Star Wars show. And so it's a little interesting to me that I feel like it hasn't gotten as much toy synergy promo as some of the other stuff has.
Yeah, that's kind of strange.
But Colin, that wraps up our HoloNet news segment. You know, one of our favorite segments here. And so now the only segment left is for us to hop right into our Star Wars moment of the week.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, Colin. So my Star Wars moment of the week is I went to Barnes & Noble, went and picked up my copy of Fat Pav Return of the Jedi. But while I picked up my copy of Fat Pav Return of the Jedi, I also picked up a copy of Edge of Balance Precedent, which is the third, not in the series, but the third Star Wars High Republic manga that they've made.
Wow.
I am not a manga reader. I've never read any manga except for the 2 Star Wars ones they published, but they're really good. They're super good, actually. These stories are great. The two original ones. Yeah, Daniel Jose Older was the author of this new one that I have not read yet. But they're exceptional. The visuals are really good. Obviously, they're in black and white. I think all manga are that way. But they're in black and white. And I haven't gotten to crack Precedent open yet, but I was super pumped because those first 2 were something else. They were great. They fit into the High Republic Phase 1. This one's in Phase 2. And it was just one of probably my most looked forward to High Republic release because of how much I enjoyed that story.
I need to glance through that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, you definitely need to check it out.
So my moment of the week is it's my birthday weekend, and my dear friend purchased for me the Fat Pav book for Return of the Jedi, and I'm so happy for that. I had a little birthday party last night at the baseball game. I rented one of the dugouts. It was a lot of fun getting to hang out with friends and coworkers, watching the game, and he gave me the book there, and it's just so thrilling to have people care about you enough, and you know. There's a younger version of me who would be pissed off that he got a book as a gift. And I wish I could go back and slap the shit out of that younger version of me because that is such a short-sighted and narrow point of view. And I have read, since we started this podcast, I have read a lot more. I read a lot of books in general. It's audio books. You know, we've had that conversation about reading them. It still is, whatever. But even before... And just reading that whole Heir of the Empire series was great. And this is the first Fat Pav book, from a certain point of view, book I get to read. I'm so pumped about it. I haven't had time to crack it open yet. And it's a great fun. And my dear friend that got me that book was my co-host, Carter. So...
your party last night was a lot of fun. Yeah, no, it was a good time. I'm happy. I love those Fat Pav books, and so I knew that you needed to get a copy of one because they are a treasure. They're a total
they
gem
really are.
For any Star Wars fan.
Well, we're going to have an episode on that as soon as we're able.
Yeah, we're definitely, we'll put something out on YouTube. I'm almost done with all of them. I've got like 7 stories left, and so I should be done tomorrow, and I'll crank out a video of my top 5 and put it on YouTube, and then Colin will do the same whenever he's finished, and then eventually we will record a special just talking about the book in general. Because, we did our Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary celebration, and we've been celebrating Return of the Jedi all year, and we want to keep that up. And this is one of my favorite ways to celebrate any of the anniversaries, because these Fat Pav books are just something else. They are so, so good. And only 16 years until the Phantom Menace one.
I hope it's not that long. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, we'll have the 50th of all of these before all of the original trilogy before we'll get to the Phantom Menace. So hopefully they publish it sooner. But I think the Phantom Menace is going to be ripe for some fact pod stories. Just a pod race alone. I mean, they're going to have like 5 pod racer point of views. But anyway, I appreciate that. I'm happy that was your Star Wars moment of the week.
Yep.
And that wraps up our show this week. It was a doozy, folks. We had a long show. We appreciate you sticking around, listening to us talk about Star Wars, talk about Ahsoka. It was a ride, man. Yeah. And I am so excited for next week.
Well, this is how much we care about what we do and Star Wars and everything in between.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We appreciate everyone listening. If you've hung on this long, we appreciate you. Well, we appreciate your support no matter what. But if you hung on this long, we super appreciate your support. And if you would like to show that support, the best way you can do it is by going over to Apple or Spotify or both and leaving a 5-star review for us. That's how we get more listeners the fastest. That's how we get our name out there. That's how we get recognized for what we do, is if you guys are just spreading the word. Go tell your friends, go tell your Discord servers, go tell your dog, go tell your grandma, and go tell the folks on Apple and Spotify how much you like the Star Wars Station Communication Podcast. Other ways you can support us, we already mentioned our Patreon, patreon.com/Star Wars Station. Got all kinds of stuff on there, but the thing coming this week is a brand new episode of the Wayward Wayfarers RPG. You can listen to the adventures of Excess and Phil and Zelzel Brekian and the Tusken Raider's name, who I just forgot. Brian's going to kill me. Brian listens to this podcast, and he's going to be so upset that I forgot Q-Talk's name, but his name is Q-Talk, and he is one of our strongest characters. So please go check out that RPG. Like I said, it's at patreon.com/Star Wars Station. And Colin, we have other station products that are firing on all cylinders right now. What are those?
Yeah, so the biggest one is Warhammer Station. And right now, as we speak, we're going to roll right from this into a preview that we're doing, that Games Workshop is doing about all the new Space Marine models and some other stuff that are coming out. It's going to be a big deal. They've already revealed a bunch of Tyranids models, and the game is really taking a step up. I think I'm going to be painting some Space Marines pretty soon. I've got a bunch left over I haven't done. And but yeah, Warhammer Station, our Instagram page for Star Wars Station is blowing up. You need to be part of that in a major way.
Yeah, come check out the Instagram. I mean, we're always doing a lot over on the Instagram. It's nice to be back running that, posting every day. It's been a lot of fun. And so please go follow us on Instagram at starwars.station. I'm always tweeting thoughts, man. I'm always just popping things off. So if you just want raw, unfiltered Star Wars brain 24/7, then go check us out on Twitter.
And they're super fresh, given the Ahsoka show coming out.
Yeah,
lots of hype stuff out there.
It's because I can't contain what I want to say about this show. And the guy that I talked to at work, who also listens to this podcast, he is gone all week. And so I haven't gotten to talk about Ahsoka with him at all. And so normally that's how I kind of like assuage it until we get to the podcast where I can spill everything. But because he was gone today, I mean, it was just tweet after tweet about Ahsoka thoughts. So a lot of people got a preview to our Hamato Ziono talk because of my tweets on Ahsoka. But go and follow us on Twitter, SW_station. One of the places that we would really, really like your support is over on Facebook and over on Discord. We've got a growing Discord and a growing Facebook group. And so if you're on either of those platforms, please head to the link tree in the bio for this podcast, or in the bio of our Instagram, or in the bio of our Twitter, and join those groups, because that is the most direct way to engage with Colin and I on a day-to-day basis. I mean, we are just all day having conversations in both of those places about Star Wars and about other things. I mean, our Discord has 40K and Marvel and Godzilla and all kinds of chats. I mean, you can talk about whatever you want there, and also on our Facebook group. So please go follow both of those and help us grow those. Follow us, like us on Facebook. We've got a Facebook page, Star Wars Station. We post the memes from Instagram over there. And, find us everywhere else. We might have a LinkedIn. I don't think we do, but maybe we do. So go follow us there. But really, we appreciate y'all's support. We appreciate you listening this long. And we appreciate your continued listening as we make it through the next 5 weeks of Ahsoka. We're going to be halfway next week, and that's going to be real sad.
Yeah, we're so looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. This show's already shaping up to be more than I could ever dream it to be. Man, and if it continues on this pace, it may supplant Andor as my favorite Star Wars show. It might. I don't know, man. I'm pretty obsessed with Andor, but It's been really good so far too.
Yeah, we're
So
looking forward to Andor big time. It's going to be so crazy.
oh yeah, it totally
Can't
is.
wait to see how that ends. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's going to be great. But until we get Andor Season 2, and until we get the next episode of Ahsoka, you guys are going to have to do one thing and one thing only, and that is keep it wizard.